Hello, I'm Brother Sean, and I'm here today to share with you a heart reflection on a spiritual transfusion of love for your survival. Well, we know what a transfusion is because if you've ever been in hospital, you will be familiar, as I was for 38 years, of the drip stand and the bag of liquid with plastic tubing going into the arm, the leg, or the abdomen, whichever. But there is such a thing as a spiritual transfusion. And the content of that transfusion is what? Of course, you've guessed it. Love. Divine love. Selfless love. Reverent love. Respectful love. For you and for me. But how do we access this transfusion? First, let me read this to you. Come to me when you are hurting, and I will soothe your pain. Come to me when you are joyful, and I will share your joy, multiplying it many times over. And Jesus says, I am all you need, just when you need it. Your deepest desires find fulfillment in me alone. This is the age of self-help. Bookstores abound with books about taking care of number one, making oneself the center of all things. The main goal of these methodologies is to become self-sufficient and confident. You, however, have been called to take a road less traveled, continually depending upon me. True confidence comes from knowing you are complete in my presence. Everything you need has its counterpart in me. I've read that before on another video, I know, but my heart was guided to open the book and read what was presented, so I'm following my heart. Yes, we live in a busy world, and yes, in multitasking as even we do here in this little monastery, where we're doing several things all at once, sometimes we lose ourselves in the minutiae of daily living. We become overwhelmed. And if you're out working, holding down a full-time job, and you've got a young family, stress can easily creep in and make life very difficult and challenging, as you know. So don't be fooled into believing that even I, as a monk, and all those other contemplatives in different religious communities around the world of different faiths, have it easy too. We don't. Our stressors may be different, but living the consecrated life in service to God, as a monk, a nun, what have you, we are not spared any of the trials and tribulations that you've been subjected to of late. So we have to prioritize. What does our mind, body, and spirit need? You and I know that we work to a 24-hour clock. And in that 24 hours, there's an allocated time for rest, for sleeping, for work. But what about prayer? I know from speaking with a lot of people on the telephone who ring for advice, who knock on the door seeking help, the numerous emails I receive, one thing has become painfully clear. The majority of people that I see and hear from rarely have time to be still, to pray, to listen to their heart, to follow their heart, and to embrace the mystery of love. Even monastics can get caught up in the minutiae of monastic living And prayer can become a drudgery. I found it a drudgery at times. So we have to make it interesting. So what is God doing today to make it interesting for you and me? But especially for you who's living in the world, where there are so many distractions. The internet, a great source of information, but also it has a dark side. It can lead you to places that can easily compromise your spiritual beliefs. I remember 12 years ago when I knew very little about angels other than what I was taught by the nuns in Ireland. What is a guardian angel and the prayer to a guardian angel? O angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love committed you here, to ever to stay be at my side, to rule and guide, amen. You probably know that. But I remember coming onto the internet for the very first time. I was quite excited, extremely naive and not really sure. But what I did was, I was told to do a search for angels. So I typed in the word angels. And I was amazed at what came up. Very little reference to angelic beings of light. And more to do with soft porn. And websites showing you women exposing their anatomy in torturous positions, and I became quite embarrassed, offended, and I felt extremely uncomfortable. And I know I have a client who has a problem with self-masturbation, whom I know uses the internet and obviously feeds that human instinct. It's a purely selfish pleasure. But the internet has many pluses, but it also has many disadvantages. So one has to be extremely restrictive and also disciplined. But coming back to the spiritual transfusion, how do we allow the Supreme transfuse love, light and blessing into our spiritual life? Firstly, the Supreme Company of Heaven speak to us to find a quiet space. And when we can budget for that space, switch off the mobile phone, put a do not disturb sign on our front door, the children are in bed, then we can relax, light a candle, put on soft music, and then use the gift of free will to call on the Supreme, to call on the messengers of God. And ipso facto, as soon as we use the words, come into my life, into my heart, share with me, there's a change. Vocal prayers do help. Silent prayers are far better. The prayers from your heart, what you're feeling, they're far better than a lot of the vocalized prayers of other people. It's best to be unique and bring your own interpretation of prayer. Prayer is undermined a lot today. A lot of people see it as it's only for monks and nuns. You know, it's not. That is a great misnomer. Prayer is a gift from God that reawakens the Supreme within us with the divine in nature. And all we have to do is surrender our heart to that. Prayer is one of the most wonderful gifts that we can engage in. But people have asked me, well, what's prayer? Prayer is what is inspired and divinely guided by love. Caring in the garden, mowing the lawn, caring for the roses, the flowers, feeding our pets, exercising them, that can be a prayer. Preparing a lovely meal that involves some thought and consideration for friends that we love who are calling for dinner. That's a prayer. Making love with your partner, that is a prayer. Embracing the divine in them through a hug and a cuddle, that's physical sexual intimacy, is spiritual intimacy with the divine in both persons. That is a very powerful prayer. Engage with it and allow that transfusion of love from the Supreme come into your life and equip you, strengthen you, support you. But you have to initiate it. You have to ask. Peace.